the sixth episode of S.A.L.T, Serving and Learning Together, a combined class project of the Master of Divinity second year and Master of Arts in Clinical Counseling first year, both of course students of Oriental Theological Seminary. We, the participants, are all students, and this is part of our learning journey under the course An Introduction to Pastoral Care and Counselling. Hence, this video is purely for educational and awareness purposes. My name is Mihimo Apon, and in today's episode of S.A.L.T, we will be talking about abuse and neglect. Abuse and neglect are painful realities that many individuals, especially children and vulnerable adults, face, often in silence. Abuse and neglect have the power to leave deep emotional, psychological, physical, and even spiritual scars that can last a lifetime if left unaddressed. Yet despite these harsh realities of its prevalence, the conversation around abuse and neglect is often met with stigma, misunderstanding, and even denial. The purpose of today's talk is to shed light on the different forms of abuse and explore its impact while looking for some possible steps towards healing and restoration. For this important discussion, I have with me Ms. Wicham, Mr. Vitale, and of course, as I've mentioned earlier, both doing their Master of Divinity second year here in Oriental Theological Seminary. So to begin our discussion on abuse and neglect, can one of you kindly walk us through on what abuse and neglect is?
Abuse is any intentional act that causes harm, injury, distress, involving misuse of power, trust, and controlling one another. And neglect is the failure to provide necessary care, love, protection, assistance to the person who needs in a physical well-being, like child, elder, and someone who is disability. Abuse and neglect both harm and form, and it also affects physically, mentally, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It also affects the individual of all ages.
Thank you for clearly defining for us what abuse and neglect is. So having cleared that obstacle and with clear understanding of the topic, let us probe further. Let us talk about the different types of abuses and neglect that we sadly see happening around us today.
Okay, so when we talk about abuse itself, it has vast categories. I mean, there are a lot of different types of abuse when we talk about it. But the type of abuse that we mostly see in our society today is, the first thing is child abuse. Now, child abuse, it also comes with different factors. In a sense, there is this child sexual abuse, child physical abuse, and child emotional abuse. And so now, that itself explains for itself when we say child abuse, but then just to say a little bit on what exactly sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and then physical abuse could be. So now child sexual abuse, what we see in our society today is sometimes it is, now talking about child abuse, we are talking about the female child who is more vulnerable to to be the victim. And so we talk about child abuse. So in our society, what we see is that, now these little girls, they are sometimes, used as, sex toys. I mean, for the sexual, for satisfying the sexual desires of those adults. Meaning, the father could use, his own daughter for satisfying his own sexual desire, or sometimes it could be the uncle who uses, someone else's daughter for sexual desires. And so now, and then it's not always about, talking about sex again. It has a, vast understanding of sex again. So it could not always be talking about those, penetration kind of sex, but it can also mean by, fondling a child, erotically touching someone. I mean, touching a child. Yeah, so those are also part of sexual abuse. Yeah, and then now talking about child abuse, physical abuse. So when it comes to physical abuse, now sometimes there is this tendency for parents and teachers to use, sticks, and then, beat a child in order to discipline him or her. But then that is okay, unless there is this, unless there is extreme force, and then, this repeated torturing of a child is seen. So physical abuse is something where, children mostly they are beaten, they are kicked, and so regardless of the types of beating, sometimes the parents would even use iron sticks and then just start hitting the child. So those are the type of physical abuse that we are talking about. And the next is emotional abuse. Now, children's they are very sensitive, and so many times it is these parents, and then through they are hurt, their emotions are hurt through the harshness of their parents, through the harshness of their friends could be, and then through the harshness of their relatives, could be their uncle, auntie, anyone. Yeah, so those are the type of child abuse, and then we also have this sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse we can have. Now we talked about child sexual abuse. That is also part of the sexual abuse. But then it's not just the child here. We can also point towards the adults, especially the female, who are very vulnerable to this sexual abuse. So it includes molestation of girls. It can also this rape case can also come under sexual abuse. And then well, sometimes it so happens that the close ones, the relatives, or like let's say the uncle uses money in order to just to in return to get these sexual desires from the adult female. And so those are some sexual abuse that we can also look into. And of course we have this emotional abuse. Again, emotional abuse, we can still look towards the child emotional abuse that is there. And even for adults, yeah, and youths. So we are also very vulnerable to emotional abuse. Now when we are insulted, most times it affects our emotions, and then it also tend to put us down. We tend to have this low self-esteem, and so those are things that affects us when it comes to emotional abuse. So emotional abuse, in a very simple way, it simply means continuous insulting of people, and then using harsh words in order to while we are addressing or talking with someone, yeah, lack of respect. So those are also the type of emotional abuse that we can see. And the other thing could be spiritual abuse. Yeah. So spiritual abuse, well, in our society now, I notice that there are a lot of people, especially the adults, who has this lack of knowledge about spiritual abuse. In a sense, they do not realize that they are being spiritually abused. Yeah, and they are being abused, but they do not realize it because they lack awareness and they lack knowledge. And so sometimes we cannot totally blame them for that. But spiritual abuse is when a leader, let's say, could be a pastor, it could be a prayer warrior, could be someone from prayer centers, or could be our teachers as well. So who uses, in the name of Jesus, we try to bring in force. We try to bring in, we try to let someone practice or do something that we really, that we want them to do. Let's take, for example, we talk about tongues. So the Bible talk about tongues, and then according to the Bible, tongues is something that we are gifted with. So it's not that everyone is gifted with tongues. There is days that someone will be gifted with tongues, the other the gift to interpret. So most times what we see in our society is that I do not blame every prayer centers here, but then there are some that that have been disclosed as well with the public, that the speaking of tongue is forced. I mean, into the people that are serving in the prayer centers, and also through an interview, I also discovered that a friend, he was treated inferior to those people who were learning how to speak in tongues. So that is the type of spiritual abuse that we are experiencing in our society. And yeah, spiritual abuse can also be misinterpretation of the Bible. And so we give a wrong interpretation, and then we make people believe that so in other words, distorting the word of God. Yeah, so those are some type of abuse that we can also see in our society.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I mean, whenever we talk of abuse, uh, unconsciously or consciously in our mind, we're just thinking about sexual abuse or physical abuse. But listening to you, we have just realized that abuse can come in many different forms. And it's hard to imagine, the untold pain and suffering that an abused person may be going through. Oftentimes we discard such talks because we are less informed on the impact it has on the one who has gone through such ordeal. When we talk about the impact or the consequences that abuse can have on a certain individual, it breaks our heart and it makes us more sensitive to such issues. So please enlighten us on the impact of abuse and neglect that can have on the physical, emotional, psychological, or as you have mentioned, even spiritual well-being of both children and adults alike.
The impact, abuse, and neglect to children and elder. There are many similarities that can be anxiety, depression, emotional numbness, and to children it can also lead to lifelong process and later to their life, the problem to their life. And to elder it can be a risk of death and the increase of diseases like heart attack, diabetes, and it can also make them confused and loss of hope and their low esteem of social role in the society. And to the children, this can abuse and neglect can lead to social anxieties to many young people as we are seeing today, and it can also make them that not coming to the community service, churches, and that we are all experiencing today.
Well, thank you so much, Wicham. Considering the impact that abuse can have on the spiritual, physical, emotional, and psychological well-being of both children and adults alike, it is hard to imagine, and it is also very hard to process that all these abuses are perpetrated by one human upon another. Well, our society as of today, maybe there was, and we didn't realize it, but sadly every day we are surprised by horrific news of abuses in one form or the other. So can you kindly enlighten us on the rising cause or the contributing factors of why cases of abuse is increasing in our society today?
So contextually speaking, some factors of abuse could be, now let's talk about child abuse. So why child abuse? It's sometimes, let's talk about substantial abuse. So if the parents are involved in substantial abuse, like let's say drug addicts, if the parents becomes a drug addict or is an alcoholic, now most times the parents will be drunk, or he or she will be in that the trip of that abuse, let's say the drugs. And so when the parents are in that state, it is so obvious that they cannot give time to their children, or sometimes they might use force on their children, and so like that. So priority on just their physical, desires. So it can also be a factor where those type of parents may start using their children for sexual desires as well, and so that could be one of the factors that leads to the rising of child abuse, and then neglect itself involves there. So when the parents are drug addict or alcoholic, most times their children are neglected. All of their earnings, their money will be invested on their drinks or on the pills that they are taking, and so that is one of the factors. Or the other could be when there is an improper relationship in the family. For example, let's say the husband and the wife, there is always quarreling among them, and so now there is this tendency for the parents to be harsh on their children as well. So sometimes through this bad relationship between the parents, it may lead to verbal abuse for the child as well. Yes, and the other thing could be lack of awareness and also lack of education in a sense. Now there are a lot of people without much theological knowledge or background. They tend to seek for spiritual help, and so these are people who are vulnerable to be the victims of spiritual abuse, and so those would be some of the factors that can cause the types of abuse that we see in our society.
I also want to add one contributing factors that will be focusing to the outside instead of to our own space and environment. That will be like we tell to children that don't talk to strangers like that. But are we taking from our own home what is happening to them? And to do that, it is the parents and the elders. It's our duty to take in our own home and environment. And this is also one of the most important, relevant, contributing factors of abuse and neglect.
Hearing about the impact that abuse can have on children and adults alike, I think we really need to talk more about these, just sensitize people in order for us to start the process of healing. Many people will be going through abuse, but not knowing that they are actually victims of such abuses. So considering the fact that it can have a deep emotional, physical, psychological, and also spiritual effect, I think we really need to be talking more about the prevalence of such things in our society. Yeah, it is sad, and it is also very painful, and it is the hard reality that all of us really find hard to accept, but it's a given that those things are prevailing in our society. But despite the harmful effects and the pain that it can cause an individual who faces such ordeal, the good news is there is also the process of healing and restoration. So having said that, in order to provide care and support, and set the survivors of such inhuman treatments on the road to healing and restoration, what are some of the approaches that we can adopt?
Okay, some of the approach for healing to abuse and neglect can be long-term support, because healing process take times, and to heal the abuse and neglect is like not a small thing. So we need take time for the process. So we need long-term support, listening to them without judging, be with them physically, support them in every possible way what they need, and even if we can give them our love, our care, and support them and make them that we are for them, and also telling them the encouraging words, physically be with them and giving them time to heal, and waiting for them, and to connect their own way and giving them time. And also the community can also play a very important role in healing the abuse and neglect. And we can also encourage them for the self-care, that this is not the end, but this is through this we can go far beyond this.
Thank you for highlighting those very important steps towards healing and restoration. I think as a community of faith, we all really need to be looking out for each other. Thank you so much for those insights. Well, we know for a fact that there are many poor people surviving, or for that matter, even facing abuse and neglect in our society today. So if they could hear you, now what would be the one message of encouragement that you would like to convey?
An encouragement, a piece of encouragement that I would like to give each and every one of you could be, when you are able to, hold yourself up at this time, why don't you also, seek for help? I mean, reach out for help, because many a times there are people who wants to help you, but then again, they cannot simply, come and help you by thinking that you need help. Of course, because they also respect your decisions, and then they respect your personal space. And that is why, a person cannot simply come into your life and say that, well, you need help, can I help you? So instead of waiting for that, I mean, as victims, why don't we also go in search of help? But again, we let us be cautious here, even when we search for help, because sometimes when we are not wise enough and we make mistakes of, searching for a helper, we search for help. But if we end up sitting down with a person who is not just wise enough, well, you might become a victim to the same abuse again. And so even while searching for a therapist, or while searching for a counselor to get healed, I would encourage you to be wise enough. And also, well, as Christians, the first priority is if you can pray and then depend on God, that itself is a great healing that will come from God.
Also, I hope these words of encouragement find you hope. The past may have left scars on you, but remember, we are there for you. Healing in the process can take time, but God is seen to you and love, and we are with you.
With those powerful words of encouragement, we come to the close of today's topic. However, I want to take a moment to remind us all over once again that awareness is the first step toward change. Let us not turn a blind eye or stay silent when we see signs of abuse. As parents, teachers, neighbors, friends, and community members, we all have a responsibility to protect and care for those who cannot protect themselves. Thank you everyone for joining us on this important discussion, and until the next time, stay safe, stay compassionate, and remember to keep the conversation going. Thank you.